Hello students. Today we are going to start with the first chapter of your supplementary reader Moments. The name of the chapter is The Lost Child by Mulkraj Anand. Brief introduction of the author Mulkraj Anand. He was born on December 12, 1905 in Peshawar and died in 2004. He is known for his realistic and sympathetic portrayal of the poor in India, and he is considered a founder of the English language Indian novel. Production of the story. In the story The Lost Child, the author tries to explore the subconscious mind of a child. He has narrated that how a child longs for all the things when he went to a fair in a village with his parents. He was attracted to toys, flowers, sweets, and lots of other things. But during that time only, he was just got lost in the crowd. And then a gentleman lended him a helping hand, and as he was crying, this gentleman offered all the goodies to him which he was asking for from his parents. But now I would say there was a contrast. Now at this time when he was being offered all the goodies that he was longing for, he had refused. Now he was asking just for his parents, and he was crying. He was just saying, I want my parents. So the story is aptly titled The Lost Child, since this child is actually lost in the materialistic world. Moving on with the chapter, let me just give you a brief reading and then I'll explain. It was the festival of spring. From the wintry shades of narrow lanes and alleys emerged a gaily clad humanity. Some walked, some rode on the horses, others sat, being carried in bamboo and bullock carts. One little boy ran between his father's legs, brimming over with life and laughter. Now, as we begin with the chapter, you can see the scenario of those times, how people used to stay in those times. It's quite an old story, and it was a festival of spring from the wintry shades of narrow lanes. Now you can make out that spring comes after winter, so it was neither too hot nor too cold, and the narrow lanes and alleys. Alleys is the meaning of alleys is are streets emerged a gaily clad humanity. Now, this line I would emphasize what you understand from these lines: gaily clad humanity. Gaily here means happiness, clad means wearing. Humanity here is the people around. So, gaily clad humanity means people were clad in happiness. They all were happy. All the people in that fair were happy. Some walked, some rode on horses, others sat. And you can see that how the author has explained that how people were moving over there. Some were walking, some were there on the horses, some people were sitting, and some were being carried in bamboo and bullock carts. And then the author comes to the main protagonist or main character of the story, that is the little boy. And there was one little boy who was brimming over with life and laughter. He was very happy and he was with his parents. So you can make out, children, how the author has. Come, child, come, called his parents as he lagged behind, fascinated by the toys in the shops that lined the way. He hurried towards his parents, his feet obedient to their call, his eyes still lingering on the receding toys. As he came to where they had stopped to wait for him, he could not suppress the desire of his heart, even though he well knew the old cold stare of refusal in their eyes. Now, the child was being left behind as he was being fascinated by the toys in the fair, but he was very obedient to his parents' call, because every now and then his parents were calling him. How? It is mentioned there, come, child, come. And he was not able to suppress his desire of looking at the toys. And as he was, too much excited, he finally asked, I want that toy. He pleaded. Pleaded here is like, requested. He literally requested to his parents. And now in the next para, children, you will see about the personality of both the parents. His father looked at him red-eyed in his familiar tyrant's way. His mother, melted by the free spirit of the day, was tender and giving him her finger to hold, said, "Look, child, what is before you?" Now, though he was very well aware that his parents are not going to buy anything for him, even though he asked, and his father, as usual, gave him a strict look. Tyrants, in like a tyrant. A tyrant is a person who always wants everything to be done according to him. But his mother was a little, soft towards him, and she was lovingly called him that, "Keep moving. Look, child, what is before you?" And then the author is going to describe how they were moving towards the fair. So first they passed through a field. A group of dragonflies were bustling about on their gaudy purple wings, intercepting the flight of a lone black bee or butterfly in search of sweetness from the flowers. Now, this para is telling about the free spirit of a child, how he was just fascinated by the little things that was coming on his way while passing through the fair. Now, moving on, he ran towards his parents gaily and walked abreast of them for a while, being, however, soon left behind, attracted by the little insects and worms along the footpath that were teeming out from their hiding places to enjoy the sunshine. Now, very beautifully explained about, the insects and the mustard field, that how they were passing through all these places towards their destination. Now, again, that voice came, "Come, child, come." His parents called from the shade of a grove where they had seated themselves on the edge of a well. He ran towards them. Now, as they were, walking on foot, they must be tired. So now the author has pointed that now they entered a grove. Grove is like a garden where flowers and fruits are there. And they seated themselves, means they just seated over there to take some rest on the edge of a well. And the child ran towards them. And now, when he ran towards them, what was there? How the explanation is being done? A shower of young flowers fell upon the child as he entered the grove, and forgetting his parents, he began to gather the raining petals in his hands. Children, you must have seen, like, there are many trees where you'll find a lot of small flowers, and when you shake them, the flowers tend to rain down. It's very beautifully told here that the raining petals, they were coming down naturally, but lo, he heard the cooing of doves and ran towards his parents. So everything around is so natural, flowers, insects, and now the dove. Dove is a bird. "Come, child, come." Again, the same voice. Now, this three words are being repeated again and again by his parents, either by his mother or by his father, because now this line shows that the parents were very well aware and very well concerned for their child. They called to the child, who had now gone running in wild capers round the banyan tree, and gathering him up, they took the narrow, winding footpath which led to the fair through the mustard fields. As they neared the village, the child could see many other footpaths full of throngs converging to the whirlpool of the fair, and felt at once repelled and fascinated by the confusion of the world he was entering. Now, as they were entering the fair, he saw so many other things which were there in the fair, and he was fascinated. A sweetmeat seller hawked gulab jamun, rasgulla, barfi, jalebi at the corner of the entrance, and a crowd pressed round his counter at the foot of an architecture of many colored sweets, decorated with leaves of silver and gold. The child stared open-eyed, and his mouth watered for the burfi that was his favorite sweet. "I want that burfi," he slowly murmured, but he half knew as he begged that his plea would not be heeded because his parents would say he was greedy. So without waiting for an answer, he moved on. Now, as they moved towards the fair, the child was again being fascinated by so many things in the fair. And now the first thing that his eyes met were a sweetmeat seller. That means, you must have seen in some shops or something that the sweets are placed in a box, in a shape of a pyramid or on top of each other. That is why, it is very beautifully said here that the crowd pressed round his counter at the foot of an architecture of many colored sweets. Architecture, yes, like they are placed on top of each other in a very neat and clean way. And the sweets were decorated with leaves of silver and gold. And the child, what was his favorite sweet? It was barfi, and he could not resist. And so he just asked his parents, though he very well knew that he's not going to get the sweets. He asked for the barfi, and he knew that he's not going to get it. So without waiting for an answer, he moved on. A flower seller hawked a garland of gulmohar, a garland of gulmohar. The child seemed irresistibly drawn. He went towards the basket where the flowers lay heaped and half murmured, I want that garland. But again, he well knew his parents would refuse to buy him. So wherever he was moving, he was getting tempted by the things. So initially, he got tempted by the sweets, and now the garland of gulmohar flowers. And again, he asked for it, and he knew that he is not going to get it, and so he moved on. Now, continue with the reading. A man stood holding a pole with yellow, red, green, and purple balloons flying from it. The child was simply carried away by the rainbow glory of their silken colors, and he was filled with an overwhelming desire to possess them all. But he well knew his parents would never buy him the balloons because they would say he was too old to play with such toys. So he walked on further. So every now and then he was getting tempted by the things, and he very well knew that his parents have something to tell that he was greedy, he was too old, and now this the third thing that he came across was balloons, and he got fascinated. He wanted to have all of them, but he knew that he's not going to get it. So he moved on. And now the fourth thing that he came across was a snake charmer. A snake charmer stood playing a flute to a snake which coiled itself in a basket, its head raised in a graceful bend like the neck of a swan, while the music stole its invisible ears like the gentle rippling of an invisible waterfall. The child went towards the snake charmer, but knowing his parents had forbidden him to hear such coarse music as the snake charmer played, he proceeded farther. Now again, he got fascinated by the snake charmer, and but he very well knew that he can't stand over there and see how the snake is uh, moving with the music, and he knew that his parents will tell him not to look at such things. There was a roundabout in full swing. Now, what is a roundabout? It's a swing, like you see in Hindi jhula. Men, women, and children carried away in a whirling motion, shrieked and cried with dizzy laughter. The child watched them intently, and then he made a bold request. I want to go on the roundabout. Please, father, mother. Now, he could not resist anymore. He was refused for so many things, but seeing a roundabout, he just made a bold request. Means this time he was behaving boldly and he was like a stubborn child and said, "I want to go on a roundabout." But what do you think? No, there was no reply. He turned to look at his parents. They were not there. Ahead of him, he turned to look on either side. They were not there. He looked behind. There was no sign of them. So finally, when the child showed his boldness to ask for a ride on roundabout, he found that the parents were not around. And this started the, that danger, that thought of being lost in the mind of a child. A full, deep cry rose within his dry throat, and with a sudden jerk of his body, he ran from where he stood, crying in real fear, Mother, Father! Tears rolled down from his eyes, hot and fierce. His flushed face was convulsed with fear. Panic stricken, he ran to one side first, then to the other, hither and thither in all directions, knowing not where to go. Mother, Father, he wailed. His yellow turban came untied, and his clothes became muddy. Now, when he realized that he is lost. Now, what is the situation of the child? He was crying, he was panic stricken, and now the only thing that he wants is his parents. He just wanted to have a look of his parents, which he was not able to find. And he was wearing a turban. Now you can see that how the author has described his appearance. He was wearing a yellow turban which came untied, and his clothes also became muddy. Having run to and fro in a rage of running for a while, he stood defeated, his cries suppressed into sobs. At little distances on the green grass he could see, through his filmy eyes, men and women talking. He tried to look intently among the patches of bright yellow clothes, but there was no sign of his father and mother among these people, who seemed to laugh and talk just for the sake of laughing and talking. Now, after so much of crying, he stopped and it was suppressed into sobs, and his eyes were only looking for his parents, and he tried to, figure out from the crowd that if he could find out a familiar face of his parents. He ran quickly again, this time to a shrine to which people seemed to be crowding. Every little inch of his space here was congested with men, but he ran through people's legs, his little sob lingering, "Mother, father." Near the entrance to the temple, however, the crowd became very thick. Men jostled each other, heavy men with flashing, murderous eyes and hefty shoulders. The poor child struggled to thrust away between their feet, but knocked to and fro by their brutal movements. He might have been trampled underfoot, and he not shrieked at the highest pitch of his voice, "Father, mother!" A man in the surging crowd heard his cry, and stooping with great difficulty, lifted him up in his arms. Now, while he was trying to look for his parents, he saw a shrine to which people seemed to be crowding. What is shrine? A shrine is a religious place where people go, and it was very crowded, and there also he must have thought that maybe the parents are there, so just went over there to look for his parents. But people over there were not looking at him. They were very rude, and no one cared for him. But out of so many people, there was one kind man who heard his cries and lifted him up in his arms, and then he asked, "How did you get here, child?" "Whose baby are you?" the man asked as he steered clear of the mass. The child wept more bitterly than ever now and only cried, "I want my mother, I want my father." Now this kind man lifted him up and asked him, "Where are your parents and why are you crying?" But the only answer that this child knew was, he was just telling that, "I want my mother, I want my father." The man tried to soothe him by taking him to the roundabout. "Will you have a ride on the horse?" he gently asked as he approached the ring. The child's throat tore into 1,000 shrill sobs, and he only shouted, "I want my mother, I want my father." Children, you have seen that the things are getting reversed. Earlier, he wanted to have a ride on a roundabout, and now, when this man is offering him a ride, he refused. He said, "I just want my parents." The man headed towards the place where the snake charmer still played on the flute to the swaying cobra. "Listen to that nice music, child," he pleaded, but the child shut his ears with his fingers and shouted his double-pitched strain. "I want my mother, I want my father." The man took him near the balloons, thinking the bright colors of the balloons would distract the child's attention and quieten him. "Would you like a rainbow-colored balloon?" he persuasively asked. The child turned his eyes from the flying balloons, and now you can see whatever he was asking for, he was being provided by that kind man, but the child was refusing again and again. And what a tragedy of life that whenever he was expecting those things, he was being refused by the parents, and now when he is being offered all those things, this child doesn't want all those things. The child turned his eyes from the flying balloons and just sobbed, "I want my mother, I want my father." Now he refused a ride on the roundabout. He didn't want to listen to the music played by the snake charmer. He refused the balloons, and now he is going to refuse the sweets as well. Let's see. The man is still trying to make the child happy, bore him to the gate where the flower seller sat. Look, can you smell those nice flowers, child? Would you like a garland to put round your neck? The child turned his nose away from the basket and reiterated his sobs. I want my mother, I want my father. Thinking to humor his disconsolate charge by a gift of sweets, the man took him to the counter of the sweet shop. What sweets would you like, child? He asked. The child turned his face from the sweet shop and only sobbed. I want my mother, I want my father. And that's the end of the story, children. Now you see that how his desire started from the sweet shop. And wherever he asked for all those things, his parents refused. And now, when this man, everything that he desired was being offered to him, he refused everything. And now he was just asking for his parents. So, the most important thing for a child here was his parents. And as you see that the ending is not given, we call such type of stories as open ending stories. Here the uh, decision is left for the audience, for the readers to decide whether he met his parents or he was lost. So when we'll be in the class, we'll discuss it. But let me just brief you that it was a most probably he met his parents because it was a small village and the parents must also be there in the fair, and he got a kind man to help him out. So probably he was handed over to his parents. But you see that how the child was entirely a different person at the end of the story. Like within, you can say within just a few time, within minutes, he was a changed person. He just now had no desire except to look for his parents. Brief you with the key points. How the story had started. It's mentioned that it was a spring festival and there was a little boy with his parents, and how his parents were kept calling him over and reminded him to walk beside them. And then finally they reached the fair, and he was very happy and excited to see so many sweet things, and uh, he asked for the sweet, which he was being refused, then a flower seller, then a balloon seller, then a snake charmer. But every time he moving ahead, the child was charmed by a roundabout. And there he realized that he was being separated from his parents. And then he got extremely scared and rushed in panic to a shrine and to look for his parents, and there he was crying, and then there was a kind man who heard his cries and rescued him from being trampled. Then this kind man offered him everything that he was asking from his parents, but now this time he just refused everything, and he did not want anything else other than his mother and father. So the man finally took him to a snake charmer, the balloon seller, the flower seller, and he offered to fulfill all his wishes that he had made just a little while ago. But the child turned down all the offers. He just wanted his parents and nothing else. Thank you.